All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I am super excited to be here, and I think the last time I spoke at GAconf was years ago. So, um, one of the things, the recurring kind of messages that I hear is about, making sure that we're advocating well. And part of that is on the developer side. And for us in the occupational therapy medical side, we're also fighting that fight. And I wanted to take you kind of through a little bit of a uh, my story so that you can understand the challenges we have gone through and some of the things that we're working with as well. So let's talk about it. So if you kind of look at my journey in accessibility and gaming, I was in the Army for about 20 years, and one of my last duty assignments, I was chief of the amputee center at Walter Reed, which is a very big military facility. And there we had about 200 amputees. And one of the things that I would try to do, is you get to know your clients and try to figure out who they are and what they need. And we would do what they call an occupational profile, and that would be include things like, who are you? What do you like to do for fun? And all these things. And so the questions would always come where it's like, what are some of the things that you've lost that you want to be able to do again, that we can maybe work on? And the top two answers was always, I want to play video games and I want to have sex. Fair enough. And the great thing is that we actually can do both of those. But this is not going to be this is not going to be the sex conversation today. We will talk about accessibility. So now I am not an engineer. I'm not a developer. I don't have the same skill set as most of you, but I do have a very creative mind. And so one of the things that I would always look for is before a lot of the accessibility conversation was happening. This was kind of around 2010, 2011, 12. There wasn't a lot of products out there that you could go get, so you'd have to figure it out. And so I explored a lot of different ways to be able to game, and that's, through like rock band drums, or like the conga drums for Donkey Konga and stuff like that. But I would look for different ways that people could game so that maybe I can make a game more accessible for somebody. Another thing I would do is some splinting and whatnot. And there was a time where, as I was working with some of my patients in that therapeutic space, that somebody walked in and he saw what I was doing, and he's like, "Hey, well, what are you doing over there?" I was like, "Yeah, we're trying to get this guy to be able to game again. He lost both of his hands, and just trying to figure out some different ways." He's like, "Well, why don't you just like rewire these buttons and put this right here?" And I was like, "Bruh, like I don't know how to do that stuff." And so he's like, "Well, how about I help you with that?" And that man, his name is Ken Jones, and he's right there. And he is our founder for Warfighter Engage, which we'll talk about for a minute. Yeah, please. Absolutely. And Ken and I started collaborating, where I could do a lot of positioning and whatnot. He could do a lot of reworking of controllers, and that was kind of really mind blowing to me. And so he'd build out buttons, he would rip apart Xbox controllers, and do a lot of hacking, literal hacking, and figurative. So we started collaborating. We came up with this nonprofit. You can see here, Warfighter Engaged. Three of us are here today. Caitlin Jones, you guys probably know from Microsoft, is also on our team. Myself, Ken, and him. And Warfighter Engage was born. And our mission was like, we wanted to provide free solutions to warfighters, anybody that was injured in a military setting, or maybe even their family members. And really, it kind of reached out to kids and just really everybody. But we wanted to have free solutions for the military and stuff. And so we would do things like, kind of like I said before, if it's going to advance more. Okay, that advanced too much. Like this is a good example in your top left. That's a splint that I would make. And I use what they call thermoplastic. It's a heated plastic where I could mold around somebody's hand or residual limb or something so that I could position a controller in a place where they could play. And then, of course, Ken would rewire buttons and drill things and, rip apart all the things, beautiful things that a lot of y'all make. And so we would provide a bunch of different solutions. And we were blessed to be a part of that initial conversation with Xbox to come up with the adaptive controller, and on that team to kind of bring that to the world. And it was such a really cool and neat experience to have such a small nonprofit like us to be able to work with industry. So you can see some of those solutions there. And, you know, I started to do a lot of work in a space that was assistive technology and universal design. And so I pursued my doctorate in that. And I learned a lot of different things. I did my doctoral thesis on accessibility in gaming. And this is a very crude, small timeline of accessibility and whatnot. And I had a chance to talk with Ian and some other accessibility champions and really scour the internet for anything that I could find. And this is, again, certainly not even close to an inclusive space of the history, but it gave me kind of a space to start from and looking at some of the hardware solutions. So what would happen in the therapy world? Is we, like probably you guys have experienced, is we are given this kind of space that says gaming is not important, it's not a big deal, it's inferior to other things in life, and so we should not take it as serious as other things. And so I always had a big problem with this, and so I set out as a part of my doctorate to disprove this. And so I decided that if you look in a therapy space, one activity that people really love is gardening. Somehow gardening is like this beautiful thing that everybody values so high, and nobody devalues gardening, especially like gaming, right? So I decided to go like and get some statistics, and I found out that about in America, and I just did a US study, about 185.9 million people are active gardeners, right? And you guys already know where this is going. And ESA always does their report every year, and we found out that, you know, at the same time that about 212 million people are gaming. So why do we put so little emphasis on gaming as an important activity? Right. And so this is a message that a lot of other therapists and whatnot are always talking about, how this is important, and technology is only going to get more and more prevalent in our, you know, our day-to-day lives. So let's make sure that we're being generationally relevant and intentional with what we're doing. All right. So, so gaming, right? So I have two big approaches when I look at gaming in general. And whenever I talk about it, there's two very specific directions I go. And one of them is I want to explore ways to make gaming accessible and fun for everyone, talking to the crowd. And the other way is a little bit different. It's I want to explore ways that I can use gaming, play, and technology therapeutically. And what that is like, how can I harness physical video games to basically, you know, get therapeutic results, right? And actually, there's a little cameo by Caitlin there when she was doing her internship using gaming and the Xbox Adaptive Controller to help somebody have better outcomes. And a really interesting story about that picture is that guy right there, the day before, we had him stand up. He was in a motorcycle accident, and we had him we're trying to work on standing tolerance, just being up longer. And we put him in front of, I think, a puzzle. Caitlin, was it a puzzle or something? And he stood for like a minute and 15 seconds. Not a long time. And, you know, we know that distraction is powerful medicine, right? And so the next day, Caitlin and I were talking, it's like, let's put him up on the Zac, you know? This is right as the adaptive controller was released. We were doing, you know, work before anybody else even had the product. And we put this guy up, and I think just, again, one session later, what did he stand for? 7 minutes? 17 minutes, yeah, in just one day, and playing video games, right? I mean, and so we know that there's a lot of power, a therapeutic, really a big therapeutic component to healing when we're gaming, right? In multiple ways. And so that's a whole nother conversation, but I wanted to explore a little bit more about what I decided to do on here. So this is what would happen. This is what happens. And Caitlin gets this all the time. Other therapists get it all the time. But there's a very small amount of OTs, medical personnel, that have this kind of background in gaming, right? And usually what will happen is, hey, Erik, I've got this patient. He's got a spinal cord injury. He wants to game, but he can't. Can you help me? Or can you help him? And as for years, we would cater to that. Sure, no problem. Let's get him on the phone. Let's do that. I mean, with Warfighter, we do it all the time, right? But it got to be to a point where it's like, I'm really just like enabling these people to not really seek on their own. I'm just doing the work for them, right? And raise your hand if compensation's an issue for consultants. Yeah, huge issue, right? And so we're also not being reimbursed for it. So I'm just like giving my free time and my brain that should probably charge money for this to whoever asks, right? So now there is a couple issues. One, when this happens, so hey, I have this patient at this hospital. Well, that's great, except that there's a lot of hospital policy that doesn't necessarily let me actually engage unless I have all these waivers signed and like I'm a a volunteer or something like that. So that's a big issue. And by the time that happens, that patient could be gone, right? The second thing is like we don't have the bandwidth for it, right? So people need to be empowered to be able to do more. So in my doctorate, I was thinking like, what could I do to help the gaming industry, to help the therapeutic industry, and have an overall, positive benefit to people moving forward. And the first thing that I thought was like, I want to have a great consolidated resource for healthcare professionals, like somewhere that they can go, right? And so I created this website. It's called the Rehab Arcade. And you can go to the website right now, and it's a work in progress. It's not complete. But what I did was I started to harness doctoral students to help do my bidding, but to help me create this, right? And we're gonna go through this a little bit, and I'll show you exactly what goes into this. But it's a space that I can direct healthcare professionals, you guys, if you wanted to, and say, hey, look, this is a great consolidated resource. It'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And where to start, right? So when we have patients and whatnot, and how I thought about this was we typically approach patient care like this, right? We evaluate our clients, we set some goals for them, and then we develop some kind of treatment plan, right? So in the Rehab Arcade, what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a therapeutic generator. I wanted to create some space for evidence that could back up what we were saying, and then also have accessibility solutions. And this is what we came out with, right? So this is the therapeutic generator. Now, this isn't as applicable to you guys, but I think that you would find it interesting. What we did was we created this space where if you were a therapist, you didn't know anything about gaming, but maybe there was a Nintendo in your clinic, you're like, hey, I wanted to use that. Can you help me use that? This is what we would do. So I created, this is on Typeform, and basically it's just kind of a flow, right? Like what kind of console do you have? Okay, I've got a Nintendo. Well, which Nintendo do you have? I got a Switch. All right, well, what kind of thing do you want to work on? Do you want to work on mental health, cognition, physical disabilities? We click cognition. It says, well, what kind of game do you want to play? Let's do an adventure game. And then it would come up with a list of adventure games for the Nintendo Switch that would help work on cognition, right? And people would be like, well, how does Legend of Zelda work on cognition? Show me the evidence that proves that, which is why I had the second pillar, which was evidence, right? So if you click on the evidence page, then you would find out that there is a whole list of different things. So as I go down, I have a lot of evidence. And of course, this is my doctorate students going through and finding me all these things. But I have evidence for cognition and evidence for physical disabilities, mental health, therapeutic practice, and exercise. But if you clicked on one of these, it would come up, which I'm going faster than my slide now. You'd come up with gaming and cognition. So look, playing Super Mario 64 increases hippocampal gray matter in older adults. And this, children, is what you need to take to your parents to prove that what you're doing is good, right? And so I wanted a resource that if somebody challenged it, let's say reimbursement said, oh, video games suck, you can't use them. But then all of a sudden you say, well, what about this? This research proves that, in fact, it is actually a very viable therapeutic method. So we created that. And then I created an accessible gaming hub, right? So this was something that I knew that I wanted to do from the get-go. And I knew that this space was out there for a lot of people have done something like this. Like, here's some resources and everything. But what I wanted to do was focus on the therapeutic the therapist side, the healthcare side, like, I don't know what I'm doing, help me here, right? And so I created, essentially a space that said, We're going to start here, and then I'm going to take you somewhere. And what we needed to do was start with that first thing, right? We needed to evaluate the client. And right away, I knew that my doctoral project was going to be creating an instrument to evaluate somebody for accessibility, right? So we do all these things, developers put all this stuff in play, but what happens when somebody needs to figure out how to actually do it? Right? And anybody that's worked with physical, with the inside, the end user knows that this is not a, one size fits all. It's very challenging, very difficult. And so I created a thing called the Game Up, right? And it is the game assessment and measurement for enabled user performance. Acronyms, right? We got to make it sexy. So the first thing I did in this was I did a needs assessment, and this isn't a great slide, and it's a little bit light, but essentially what it's showing is that I went out and I asked a lot of people, like, how do you evaluate somebody to play? Like, what does that look like? And most of the time, it's like I'm asking Caitlin or Ken or Aaron Mustin-Firsch at Craig, like, what do you guys do? And they're like, well, I just kind of eyeball it. I know what I'm doing already, so I know what to set up and how to set it up. The problem is that those people are already people that know what they're doing. This website, this resource is for people that don't know what they're doing, right? So I put a big needs assessment. I was like, hey, do you know of a resource or an evaluation tool to evaluate somebody to be able to play? And you see here, 93% of people said no. The 7% is actually interesting because it was more like able gamers. Well, it's like, okay, that's a website or an organization, but what is the tool that you're using? So this is actually a pretty skewed because nobody actually came to me with some actual viable evaluation tool. Because anytime we do something, we should have a needs assessment, right? We should know that there is a need to fill. Don't just fill something. There's a need, right? And then also, like, what is your confidence with accessible gaming? And you can see that there's some people, most people were somewhat unconfident, like 61%. But if you added all those up from like 18%, so anyways, a lot of unconfident people, right? So I was like, okay, so this is something that I need to do, right? So my number one highest priority when creating this instrument was I wanted to focus on their abilities and not their deficits, right? So many times, every time somebody says, hey, Eric, can you help me with this person? I was like, all right, talk to me about them. Well, they can't do this. They can't do this. They have these things. They're not able to these. And it's like, that doesn't serve me, right? The things in life that serve me are what you do, what you can do. So let's make sure this is ability focused. So as I'm evaluating, it's a bonus thing every time. Oh, now I have this. I have an extra this. And that's what I wanted to do, right? So if a client has access to any controlled human performance factor, that they can engage in some kind of gaming, right? And that could be sip and puff controls, that could be eye gaze, that could be brain function, if we want to get crazy. But I mean, any type of movement of the body, right? So when I created this, this is what it looks like, and I'm just gonna let it scroll so you can kind of peruse it, right? It's like 9 pages, but it starts out with explaining gaming to somebody that doesn't know it. Like, what are typical game controller inputs if you didn't know that? There are triggers, there are thumbsticks, there's action buttons, there are menu buttons, there's system buttons, all these different things that go into a controller. It's important for you to understand that that is part of it. And then I said, these are all the ways that you can use the human body to game. And so there's body movement, brain activity, eye gaze, speech and voice controls. And then I went into go ahead and do this evaluation, which I'll get into in just a minute. During the development, I also said I want to make a kind of a gaming 101 take on this. Like, if you don't know anything, you go in, you could learn it pretty quickly, and then it would give you solutions for human performance, right? It wasn't, however, designed to give you solutions for accessibility. It just says these are the things on the human that can work. But we're going to give you resources here in a minute, right? So I went out, I did a lot of kind of practicing, right? Nothing about us without us, right? I'm not going to just create this and be like, it's perfect. I want to create it. I want to have people use it, say it's shit, and then try it again, right? And so that's what I did, right? So I did a lot of different gaming clinics. I used all kinds of different types of conditions, CVA, spinal cord injury, amputees. That's a quad amputee right there, who's in this picture, about 5 minutes later, beat Super Mario Bros. Wonder with his kid as a quad amputee, with some very simple solutions. And we all cried, of course, because that's what we do. But I wanted to observe the tool. I wanted other therapists to give it a go, tell me what they thought about it, have some feedback, and the feedback was great, right? So essentially, what the tool is going to do, and not necessarily that this is for you, but it's going to go through every kind of function of the human body, right? And we're going to do a full analysis of movement and a full analysis of the other type of sensory outputs, right? So for the shoulder, we'll start at the shoulder. We'll do shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, shoulder abduction, shoulder adduction, shoulder internal rotation, shoulder external rotation. All those are switches, right? Elbow flexion, elbow extension, supination, pronation, all those are switches. Wrist extension, wrist flexion, switch, switch. Ulnar deviation, switch. Radial deviation, switch. So in my mind, I'm like creating, this whole kind of variety of ways to be able to game, right? And so then at the end, you come up with a bunch of stuff. If you want to download a copy, QR codes up there, you certainly are welcome to. I am working on version 1.3 at this point. So there is some new developments which we're excited about. And then in the end, you'll have a bunch of stuff that says you can use all these tools of the human body to be able to play. And somebody says, okay, great, now what? Okay, well, now here's some resources that you can use, and like I have Able Gamers, some other different special effect, Xbox, and we push them to different places where they can find some of those resources. But one of the big ones is to come back to the Accessible Gaming Hub. And this is where we provide a bunch of different types of solutions. So if I was looking for, so I do my evaluation, and now I want to do my treatment plan, right? So I go to Motor Control Solutions, I'll click it open, and let's just see what comes here, right? So, oh, look, there's a lot of great things here that oh boy, it's going slower than I want it to. Oh, look, there are adaptive controllers. What do I need to know about adaptive controllers? Let's take a look. Okay, there's the Xbox adaptive controller. This is how you set it up, and this is where you can buy it. Here's the Access controller. Set it up and buy it. HoriFlex, set it up and buy it. How would you do that? So if you didn't know, you can do it. Here's a bunch of buttons and switches, and here's some recommendations that you can use for different types of movements and whatnot. So how to explore through all that stuff, maybe using splinting, maybe using different types of switches and buttons. And ideally, once this is all fully functional, you'll have this massive resources of all the great places to find your buttons and switches and whatnot. So all that to say, we created it. It's great. This is the very first time I'm actually showing it to somebody, so I'm very anxious. And I am not a developer. Like, you guys do beautiful things, and I'm just me. And I'm trying to just do my best. But we're doing some really cool stuff, and I'm super excited about it. And I would absolutely love your feedback. You guys go in there, be like, hey, you should add this to your tool, or you should go, hey, this is a really good joystick. You should make sure that is in there. And maybe some of you helped me out. I put out on Twitter X that I want to know what your favorite controllers are, because I want to make sure that we have the community that is engaging in here, so I can empower people to set up other gamers and whatnot. So that's all I have. I don't even know what my time is. I think I'm right on time. Perfect, because that's how I do things. But rehabarcade.com, it is live, like I said. There is also a space that you can contact us, give me feedback, all those things. If there's a developer that's like, hey, bro, like, I would love to help you with this, yes, please do that. But that's my information. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, all those places. And I forgot to do this first, and I'm so sorry, but I am white male, graying beard, wish I was in my 30s, but really in my late 40s. And I'm red in the face because I'm so anxious. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.